Welcome into the Wiltfong Whip Around. It's another big weekend of spring games. We're going to go to Michigan, Texas, USC, and more. We're going to cover it all today, I promise. Plus, we got some new Fong bombs, so let's get right to it. But first, guys, we're almost to 50K. Do me a favor, jump on board, hit subscribe for me, please. All right, let's bring in the plug, Steve Wiltfong, and we are going to go out to Austin, Texas, where the Longhorns, they have a big spring game weekend, and of course, some big names on campus. We'll start with five-star wide receiver Cunningham out of the state of Mississippi. He's been taking a lot of visits, and everywhere he goes, he kind of enjoys it. And a lot of five-stars have also been coming on campus at Texas. Do they have a shot at turning this Cunningham recruitment their way after this trip?
Well, I never count out Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns for any receiver. When you look at Coach Sark's track record with receivers, the way he schemes them open in his offense, the development that he's had at the position under his watch, it's a place where receivers think that they can really blossom, grow, and maximize their ability. And they'll have to grow in this recruitment because I think Texas is trailing some schools coming in. You obviously have Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby's their top overall target on the board. Alabama has made an impression on him. He has an official visit locked in with them. Florida State's a place that he's felt at home at during visits. Tennessee's in there, was just at Florida. But it's Texas's turn. It's going to be a tremendous weekend on campus for the spring game, and he'll be one of the blue chippers on campus, soaking it up as Sarkisian and company look to build on a class that ranks number 8 nationally right now by On3.
Yeah, and that's one five-star that they have a little bit of work to do with, but athlete Michael Terry, the number 1 athlete in America, he's a five-star from San Antonio, Texas. He'll be on campus as well, and the Longhorns have a slight lead on the recruiting prediction machine over Nebraska, but is this one maybe a little bit wider of a lead than the recruiting prediction machine indicates?
Yeah, I think there's a few schools in play for Michael Terry, who also may have a track meet this weekend. But you have Texas in there. You have Texas A&M, where he'll take an official visit in June. Oregon is a front runner here. And then Nebraska, where he'll be next weekend on an official visit. Michael Terry's one of the more interesting prospects in the Lone Star State. Enjoy talking to Charles Power and Cody Belair about him, whether you like him at running back or H-back, tight end, receiver type, or a difference maker on defense. He's a guy that's coveted by many of the programs in the region, and the Longhorns are one of the schools that he's looking hardest at.
Yeah, let's stay in the state of Texas and talk about linebacker Ryder Lions. His recruitment has blown up this spring. How do you read this with the Texas Longhorns?
Well, they're definitely one of the front runners, if not the team to beat. They've done a good job recruiting Ryder Lions and showing him a trajectory of the program, one that can compete for national championships. The move to the SEC, playing against the best of the best every Saturday. There's a lot of enticing things about Texas, and they're a program that have long been considered one of the front runners for him. Texas A&M is another program that's definitely at or near the top. Talk to some sources. They think ultimately he'll end up in the state. Texas A&M had him on campus last weekend for another good experience. Mike Elko and company and what they do defensively speaks to Pedan and his family. But Ohio State, Florida State, and USC also have had really good recent visits with him. So perhaps he does leave the state. But I think more sources than not think he ultimately ends up in state. And Texas is certainly a very intriguing option for Riley.
All right. The last name on this list is also the most intriguing name on this list, at least to me. Kon Russell, the quarterback out of Duncanville High School, committed to SMU early, but we've seen his recruitment take off. Florida Gators are heavily involved here, and this weekend, Texas is bringing him in on a visit. And it's interesting to me because they already have KJ Lacey committed. So do you view Kon Russell as an addition to a KJ Lacey, or is Texas kind of hedging their bets with KJ Lacey also maybe looking around?
And certainly SMU's doing everything they can to keep Kon Russell in the fold. The thing I like about Kon Russell, Josh, is I know for a fact that he's telling coaches he doesn't care if there's one quarterback in the class already or what. He's a competitor. He believes in himself, and if that's a school he wants to go to, it's not going to bother him if he's part of a 1 or 2 quarterback class. And so Texas already has KJ Lacey in the fold. He's going to be back on campus this weekend as well. So it'll be interesting to see what develops as Texas keeps him warm right now.
What's your gut say on Kon Russell? Does he end up signing with SMU, or do you see him going elsewhere?
Well, it's too early to say that he's going to flip, but obviously he is dotting I's, crossing T's, going out to see schools, continuing to build reports and relationships with other programs, and taking trips. So if I'm SMU, I'm a little nervous about that, but time will tell.
Yeah, hey, he's a coveted quarterback right now. All right, before we get done with this Texas segment, I want to ask you about running back James Simon. His RPM shows LSU, but I feel like he's more so trending to Texas because LSU just landed TJ Lindsey, kind of took that second running back spot at LSU. They also have Harlan Berry. So are you considering a recruiting prediction machine pick of Simon to Texas? How close are you on that?
Well, I talked to James Simon's dad, John, earlier this morning, and they're very excited to get out to Texas to experience that spring game atmosphere. They love the head coach and what he's done, Coach Sarkisian, and then Tashard Choice, the way he's developed running backs and the amount of time he's poured into the relationship. They are very excited about Texas right now, and they should definitely be considered one of the front runners. And this could be his last visit too. He just visited Notre Dame, also made the rounds, went by A&M, went by Alabama in the spring, and also went by LSU. So he may not need to take official visits before deciding. They're going to talk about that after this Texas trip, but an opportunity to play early is there at Texas. That's one of the important factors, a clear vision of how they use their running backs. Well, the family's very comfortable with how Texas schemes their running backs and plays them. And then certainly what Tashard Choice has done recently in the NFL draft. So regarding LSU, they have the two running backs committed, as you said, but they're still recruiting James Simon heavily. They've continued to tell him there's a major place for him in their class, long-standing relationship with Frank Wilson, Sherman Wilson, and so many guys in that LSU building. And they're going to continue to try and make a push here for James Simon too. So we'll see what happens coming out of this Texas visit, as this is a recruitment that could be coming to an end.
Yeah, I'm sensing a Fong bomb dropping here soon. But this weekend, Inside Texas, you guys go follow them. They have all the juice on the On3 network. They'll cover this weekend inside and out. Football recruiting, you got it at Inside Texas. All right, Michigan spring game this weekend. So let's head to Ann Arbor. Sharon Moore and his staff have a few big names on campus. We'll start here with defensive lineman Nate Marshall, the #1 player in the state of Illinois. It seems like this is a Michigan versus teams in the South battle. Who you got?
I'm not exactly sure who I've zeroed in on as #1. I know Miami and Auburn have done a fantastic job in this recruitment. He's looking at a few others, including Illinois, where there's some family ties. But Michigan, anytime I've talked to him about the Wolverines, he always points to the great tradition, the culture, and the coaching, the intensity. He's talked about how ferocious they've played on defense and how they get after it. And he's been to some games in Ann Arbor before and talks about it being a crazy experience. And he just loves the toughness of the program and again, the tradition and atmosphere. He sees himself fitting in Ann Arbor. So there's no doubt that Michigan's also one of the teams that has a great shot to land him.
But does Michigan have the NIL strength to stay in this battle until the end?
Well, I think if you look at the way some of Michigan's players, some of their top players on their roster have been compensated, you can point to that and say these guys have made healthy sums of money. And you can also point and say Aiden Hutchinson's one of the up-and-coming faces in the NFL. So they got some ammunition in their bag. And Nathaniel Marshall, he comes from a really good family. His mom's in the DePaul Basketball Hall of Fame. She played in the WNBA. His grandfather played in the NBA for a long time. I don't necessarily know if NIL is the motivating factor in this recruitment. Now, I was talking to a high-profile offensive line coach earlier this morning that said recruitment start out that way, but at the end of most of them, NIL does become a major factor, and some of these kids just don't know it when they get into the process. But I do think that Michigan and the way that their current players are compensated is something that they could point to if that's something that becomes a factor in this recruitment.
All right, wide receiver Derek Meadows, he's coming in from Las Vegas. He's our #7 ranked wide receiver in the country. He's been taking a lot of trips. What does Michigan need to do this weekend to stand out?
Well, Ron Bellamy, their receivers coach, is really becoming one of the more exciting receiver coach recruiters in the country. Builds authentic relationships with top targets and their families, and they got Michigan in the middle of this one. This is one where Notre Dame was considered the front runner coming into the spring. Generally, if you're a Notre Dame type kid, you're also a Michigan type kid. So
Right.
he's going to like a lot of things that he sees on the maize and blue campus. But these SEC programs are definitely climbing the ladder. Alabama, a visit to the Crimson Tide campus was a big needle mover. Talked to a source that said that he really loved his time around Kirby Smart when he was on the Georgia campus, and certainly what Georgia's done is exciting. And then LSU, their top class, potentially playing with Bryce Underwood, is something of intrigue. And then Tennessee also had a good visit with them. So it's Michigan's turn. We'll see what they do with the serve.
All right, interior offensive lineman Avery Gash. He's been to Ann Arbor a bunch this offseason. It kind of feels like this one. Are you putting Avery Gash on commit watch this weekend?
Well, I think that he is the best bet to commit to Michigan this weekend of all the visitors on campus. I think that if something were to happen, he would do some sort of announcement at his high school. But he's been to Michigan's campus like 13 or 14 times. He may be the one that gives like Derek Meadows his tour this weekend. That's how often he's been on campus. But he loves the way they play on the offensive line. He talks about how historically they've been good there. He's got a good relationship with Grant Newsome, but Sharon Moore, the new head coach, has been the lead recruiter for him from the beginning. So he's a priority for them. They're in on some of the best offensive linemen in the country, but I think they ultimately get it done for Avery Gash, who's also looked strongly at Ohio State and Michigan State, among others.
Yeah, those are some of the big 2025 recruits that'll be on campus. What are you hearing, though, about new Michigan defensive line coach Lou Esposito as a recruiter?
Well, I've known sweet Lou Esposito for a long time, man, and he builds great, authentic relationships with prospects. I know I said that about Ron Bellamy, but he is excited to be at a place like Michigan where that logo is powerful. He's ready to get into and mix it up with some of the best prospects in the country. I think he'll be a good ambassador for the Wolverines. He's someone that fits that coaching staff and that culture that they had under Coach Harbaugh as they transition into Coach Moore. And I think he'll get on the right kind of kids and he'll be a factor. He'll be someone that is staying on top of the phone calls and staying on top of recruits. It's something that he enjoys, and he's got a terrific personality. So from a recruiting standpoint, he was a good pickup for Michigan.
All right. Last question I got for you regarding Michigan. Sitting at like 23 right now in the recruiting rankings coming off this national title. And I know we got a long way until National Signing Day, but real quick, when the dust settles, where do you think Michigan's recruiting class finishes? Are we looking at top 15, top 10? What can Michigan fans expect coming off of a national championship?
Well, generally they finish in the top 15, so I'm going to say that's probably the window that they'll finish in. But the recruiting rankings don't apply as much to Michigan as maybe they do for other schools with the track record of player development that they've had. Now, there's a lot of new question marks at Michigan, right? New head coach, new strength coach. They had arguably the best strength coach in the country. They've had arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country over the last couple years, from McDonald to Minter. And so new young offensive coordinator too. So there's certainly a lot of question marks around Michigan. So we'll see how these young but deserving coaches thrive in their new role. That's kind of what I'm looking at with Michigan, because their secret sauce was player development and scheme, getting guys in at 18 years old and making them ferocious in the weight room, having great nutrition, and then on the field, scheming them into great positions to make plays, whether that was on offense or defense. Obviously, they developed offensive linemen at a high rate, and if you turn on the Alabama game and the way they played in the playoffs, defensively, how they were able to be a step ahead. And those are the things I'm looking at with Michigan. I'm not caught up in recruiting rankings right now with the Wolverines. They'll sign a solid class. It's about what they're going to do with them compared to the previous regime, which did an unbelievable job, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. And Michigan fans, tap in with me. Talk to me. Where do you guys think Michigan finishes? Comment section below. All right, Notre Dame spring game this weekend, which means some very important recruits are on campus. I got On3 Steve Wiltfong here. And Steve, let's just get right into it. 4-star quarterback Deuce Knight is back in South Bend. Steve, what's the latest on Knight, his recruitment, his commitment status? Talk to us.
Well, he visited Notre Dame early this spring for a couple spring practices, talked to him this morning. He's excited to get back, see some football being played inside Notre Dame Stadium under that golden dome. And he looks forward to seeing new offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock's explosive offense. He said, obviously, Denbrock was the play caller for LSU last year, #1 ranked offense in college football. He's back at Notre Dame where he's coached so long. And Deuce Knight said he's excited to get back around all the guys he knows. He knows most of the commits are going to be there. Look, it's obvious that his phone is ringing from other schools, Alabama, Ole Miss. So Notre Dame, second visit this spring, so still feel good about him staying in the class. But anytime you continue to field phone calls and talk to other schools, like we talked about with Kon Russell earlier in the show in SMU, it makes you a little worried.
Yeah, what are your sources saying on the other side of things? How does Notre Dame feel about Knight? Are they recruiting any other quarterbacks, or are they just completely locked in on him?
I think in today's day and age, nothing would surprise you, but Deuce is saying all the right things to them right now, and they're going to get him back on campus. He's going to get back around the commits, including the #1 ranked offensive tackle in the On3 rankings, Will Black. Matty Augustine and Owen Strebig are going to be there. So 3 massive, high upside offensive linemen going to be walking around, hanging out with Deuce Nice. So look, they're doing what they can to keep him in the fold. They love him. They've been on him early. They offered him a scholarship on their pot of gold day for St. Patrick's Day 2 years ago. So this is a relationship that's long-standing, a return visit to campus this spring. So we'll see what happens. I haven't heard of them poking around on other 2025 quarterbacks, but I think all recruiting offices stay on top of kids and continue to evaluate film just in case things happen. And I would imagine Notre Dame has some other quarterbacks that they know that they like if things were to go sideways.
Yep. Well, one good sign when it comes to Deuce Knight, I read your article, he is actively recruiting on 300 wide receiver Javin Bogs. Boggs is going to be on campus this weekend along with Knight. And last night, Boggs dropped a top 7 that included Notre Dame. Where do you consider Notre Dame to be in this top 7? Front side or back side of his 7?
I think they're on the backside, but obviously they have a chance to move up with a great experience this weekend. And this is a big position of need for Notre Dame as they finish up this recruiting class. They got some nice young receivers in the stable, but it's been a while since we've seen someone like Will Fuller walking around on their football team that can light up the scoreboard at any point, and they need a dynamic receiver on this roster. And Javin Bogs had a fantastic junior year, former Ohio State commit, 93 catches for nearly 1,500 yards, 23 touchdowns, one of the best players in the Sunshine State. And as they recruit him and Derek Meadows, those are 2 pivotal guys for Notre Dame as they finish up with what is the #5 ranked recruiting class in the country right now. Chad Simmons had an update on his top 7 yesterday with upcoming visits to UCF, USC, Georgia, and Missouri. Notre Dame trying to get on the official visit calendar here. Spring game, a big opportunity for the Irish.
Absolutely. Notre Dame fans, talk to me. How do we feel about this recruiting class? Top 5 right now with a couple spots to go. Who's your top target remaining? Comment section below. Let me know who you want to add to this Notre Dame recruiting class. All right. USC Spring Game weekend with recruiting heating up. Can they keep it going? USC booming into the top 3. I got Steve Wiltfong here to talk about it. We got an elite group of not 2025, but 2026 visitors, and I do mean elite. Defensive lineman Jakeem Stewart, our #1 overall prospect, will be there. So will our #1 quarterback. But let's start with Jakeem Stewart, who's just coming off this Ohio State visit. How important is it for the Trojans to get him on campus this weekend?
Well, USC's been considered one of his favorites for quite some time now. He's been out there before, was out there recently. So he is, from where he lives in Louisiana, the amount of time he spent out at USC or going to spend out at USC, it shows how interested he is in the program. Coach Eric Henderson, Coach Nua, Coach Lincoln Riley. USC is on the short list for Jakeem Stewart, who could ultimately reclassify to the 2025 class. And if so, I would expect USC to become one of his finalists.
All right, let's talk about Ryder Lions, the number 1 quarterback in the 2026 cycle, number 5 player overall out of Folsom, California. How's USC doing early on with Lions?
They're definitely one of the favorites, not only because of what Lincoln Riley has done with quarterbacks in general, but just how close the family is to the program, with his older brother Walker being part of the program. This family's broken a lot of bread with this USC coaching staff, know them well, and so USC is definitely one of the major players for Ryder Lions.
And like I said, USC not messing around. If you're going to bring some 2026 guys on campus, why not bring on the best? RJ Simmons out of the state of California, one of the best, number 5 corner in the country. Who are the main competitors early on for RJ Simmons?
Well, he was recently at Notre Dame. Obviously, he is a legacy recruit. His father, Rodney, played for USC in the mid-90s. He's grown up around this program. He loves the environment, everything about USC. Doug Belk is the lead recruiter. He does a fantastic job on the trail. And this is a young man that's told Chad Simmons in the past that he likes the trajectory of the program. Oregon, Alabama, some of the other schools that he's had a keen eye on. But USC, that's always going to have a special place in that family's heart here. And they're one of the early front runners.
All right, before we get done with this USC segment, we got to talk about a 2025 prospect that is on campus. That's 4-star wide receiver Phillip Bell. Can USC stay hot in the 25 cycle and possibly land Bell this weekend?
If this is a receiver that they're turning it up for, then yes, absolutely. I think they'll have a great chance to ultimately keep him at home. Obviously, he's looking at places like Ohio State, Tennessee, and Oregon. But USC's been one that he's certainly had a keen eye on for much of his process. USC also hosting 5-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola this week, Josh. He's making a West Coast swing. Also went by Stanford. He's fresh off visits to Texas A&M, Michigan, Tennessee, Auburn. He's made some rounds. Alabama's high on his list as well, but it's USC's turn to get him out to campus. He's out there with his dad. And I think USC is a program that's going to be exciting to Andrew Babalola once he sees them and visits them this week as well.
Yeah, big weekend out there. We are SC. Scott Schrader and the boys do a heck of a job covering all things USC Trojans. We got new Fong bombs, so let's bring in Steve Wiltfong from On3, one of our national recruiting analysts, and we're just going to start here at the top. Steve, you put in a pick for quarterback Deron Coleman. He's out of the state of Florida. He's a 2026 recruit, and you put it into Oklahoma. What are you hearing?
Yeah, helped take his team, Lakeland, to the state championship game as a sophomore. Visited Oklahoma this past weekend, his dream school, and it met the expectations he was looking for. Talked about how family-oriented it was, the way they develop young men through that Soul Mission program that Coach Venables has, the way that Venables and company, Coach Luttrell, treat the players really resonated with him. Coach Venables gave him a coin, Josh, that says all in on it, and he told him to hold on to it. And when he's ready to make his decision, he wants him to come back and hand him the coin that says all in. I wouldn't be surprised if he did that soon. Oklahoma is for sure the leader in his recruitment. He said it was a surreal moment being on campus, seeing the Heisman trophies and all of that. This kid completed over 60% of his passes last year, Josh, for over 2,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, ran for 4 more scores. Oklahoma setting the pace for him. They're also setting the pace for another 2026 quarterback in Jaden O'Neal. I've not forecasted him to Oklahoma, but I would say that they are the leader right now if he was making a decision today. So 2 of the nation's top quarterbacks giving a hard look to Oklahoma right now in the 2026 cycle. I have Coleman on the RPM to Oklahoma, but O'Neal is someone that could also end up playing his college football in Norman.
All right, let's flip to the other side of the ball. Dante McClellan, 4-star from Canton, Ohio, the number 39 ranked linebacker in America. Mizzou, you dropped a Fong bomb for Missouri to land McClellan.
Yeah, decision coming later this month, and Missouri is the program trending there. Coach Drinkwitz, the underdog feel, the way they push their players, visits to campus. He's loving what he's seeing from Missouri right now, and I think the momentum of the season that they had last year, we're starting to see that really come to light on the recruiting trail here in 2025 with some of the guys that they're in on, and I think they lead for this 4-star linebacker from the state of Ohio.
All right, the last Fong bomb that we're going to talk about on this show is interior offensive lineman Connor Carty. He goes 6'5", 290 pounds within the state of Texas, and you have him predicting to the Aggies. Is Elko kind of finding his rhythm here?
Well, Carty's been a bit of a regular in College Station. Wouldn't be surprised to see him back on campus this weekend for the spring game. And he talks about the program moving in the right direction. He's enjoyed meeting the players, meeting the coaches. Adam Cushing seems very passionate and caring about the way he coaches his players and the way he talks to recruits. He's told me in the past, and he likes how down-to-earth Coach Elko is. And I just think he feels at home there. He's visited there a couple times. There's no question they're the one to beat. Things are developing. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the next one in the fold for the Aggies as they push for a top 10 class.
All right, you guys, another Wiltfong whip around. These drop every Monday and Thursday. Steve, we got another big spring game weekend ahead. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.